Welcome back, Only Playbook fans. It has been a while. We took a little bit of a hiatus after the draft. It's just the lull season, not a lot going on, so just needed to recalibrate, and we're ready to bring the show back. 2025 is upon us. The schedule just released last night. Draft is over. Shovit is not here. Shovit's got a lot of crazy news, so today it's me and Shishot holding down the fort. Shishot, draft is over. Teams are kind of set. Today, we're talking about running back rooms that we think are going to be fantasy relevant. Anything that surprised you while you were going through this exercise, or anything that caught you off guard?
Yeah, I think so. I was just looking at a couple teams who there's been some news in the off season like already, and then there's some teams that kind of go under the radar. So I figured let's look at some teams that go a little under the radar, that just don't have a solid guy in the backfield, and how you can approach that and how you can maybe use that to your advantage, whether that's drafting them late in the rounds or drafting multiple of these guys and just being ahead of the game.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. There's a lot of changing of guards, if you will, with running backs. And then there's a lot of teams that have brought in rookie running backs into a room that that I thought was already pretty clear cut, right? So it really just makes you have to look at things a little bit differently. But this was such a premier draft class coming into this season that even teams that already had set starting running backs going out and drafting another guy really makes you wonder what the strategy is. But we've seen the NFL slowly shift into a committee approach, which is terrible for us in fantasy football world. But that's where you have to be able to weed out the guys that are going to be the cream of the crop. And then at that point, you just have to kind of finagle your way through the rest of the season. But we'll talk about some of the backfields that we think are going to be prevalent and relevant heading into the season, where you need to monitor who's going to be starting, who's going to be getting the bulk share of the carries, even in practice and training camp, because that's going to be very fruitful heading into your draft. So, Shishot, without further ado, I'll have you kick us off with the number one team that you noticed has a running back room that we need to monitor and talk about.
Yeah, talk about monitoring the whole backfield, including the quarterback, because we have no idea what's happening, although we may have some idea here soon. But I want to talk about the Steelers first. And it really doesn't matter who the quarterback is, because the approach for this team is typically the same. They've been going with a pretty run-heavy approach for the last couple of years, ever since like the big wide receiver situation there with Antonio Brown and a couple other major guys there. They've kind of shifted. They've been like a worse team, having to rely on play action more than just like a air it out type of team they used to be at one point. So that being said, on the depth chart, I think it's very misleading. They have Jaylen Warren as number one, but we all know how this story ends, right? There's a reason they were using that 300-pound back, hypothetically 300, but they were using Najee Harris as their number one. Who hasn't seen Najee Harris and just thought, why are you doing this? Why are we using Najee Harris so much? That's because they really had no other option, because Jaylen Warren was just getting hurt all the time. There was promise last year. There's promise again this year, but I am not going to fall for this. I don't believe Jaylen Warren can be a bell cow, let alone, have fantasy value, when they just went out and got this next guy, Caleb Johnson. His comp has been with pretty good players. We're talking about Le'Veon Bell comps. We're talking about DeMarco Murray comps, Derrick Henry comps. These are players that are bell cows, right? So just think about it. This guy has the tools to handle all the duty, and they are likely going to stay with a similar scheme, although not the exact same scheme. They're not going to be that much difference, even with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. He's not the same 50 times a game, throw it kind of guy anymore. They're going to have to use a lot of their run game to supplement the rest of the game. So that being said, getting a young guy like Caleb Johnson, it's just perfect fit for this team. And I can see over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, this Jaylen Warren thing, just kind of fades away over time, and he becomes this third down back. Maybe not even a third down back if Caleb Johnson tends to do what he does best, and that's just like kind of dominate the run game from a very linear approach like these guys. And if that's successful, no team backs away from having one of those if that ends up being successful. Two other guys that you might want to just keep your eye on. Actually, one other guy, because the other guy is insignificant at this point. The insignificant guy is Cordero Patterson. That ship has sailed. It was fun. It was enjoyable when one of us had him on like in fantasy as like a very low buy type of a player. But now there's also one other person, and that's Kenneth Gainwell, right? He came over from the Eagles. Again, if you haven't seen it before, you're not going to see it at this stage of his career with two other guys that are better overall running back than him. He might get some third down duties as well, some things here and there. But here, don't my main point here is do not get fooled with this Jaylen Warren BS. He's injury prone. We haven't seen him handle big carries for more than like 3 or 4 games at a time, if that. So my money's on Caleb Johnson. Likely many people are not going to be drafting him as their number 1 or number 2 running back. If you want some really good wide receivers, and if you're a guy that goes out and gets a tight end, if you're one of those guys that gets Josh Allen early, you have room to have him as a 3rd running back or maybe even a 2nd running back if the preseason goes well.
Yeah, I think I almost agree with everything you said there. Caleb Johnson is a true 3-down running back. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. My comp to him and your comp, the ones you mentioned are all spot on. But again, it just leads us to believe what the hype around this guy could be. My comp to him was Arian Foster and Larry Johnson, because he's a prototypical runner that is not super athletic. He's not super fast. He's not super strong, but he's agile and he just knows how to run the football. Arian Foster and Larry Johnson, the biggest things that they did was they glided on the field, right? So they just had this innate ability to glide beyond defenders and one cut beyond defenders. So it's not really home run speed. It's not insane Adrian Peterson-esque running guys over, but he's just so pure with his ability to run the ball, his ability to block, pass protect, and also catch the football out of the backfield. And Shashot, you mentioned this. Najee's gone. Steelers last year were 4th in the NFL in carries out of the running back field, right? So you have your number 1 running back no longer able to do that. What you mentioned, when they had Jaylen Warren come in and try to do that, he got hurt. And so we already know that Warren is a better change of pace guy. He's not going to be the guy that's getting 25 carries a game. And like you said, it's so easy for them to put him as RB1 on the depth chart and people get fooled. And if you're doing like best ball leagues and if you're drafting early for whatever reason, you're taking Jaylen Warren, well, you're gonna screw up, because again, I think when the NFL season kicks off, we're gonna see Caleb Johnson really take the reins here. And again, it's an Arthur Smith offense. Like you said, they're not deviating what their focal point is. It's run the football. They traded away George Pickens. We're also assuming that Aaron Rodgers signs there, right? I think that's the assumption, but the fact that he signs there still means Caleb Johnson's going to have a tremendous value. If he doesn't sign there and Mason Rudolph's the starting quarterback, then that brings even more value to the run game, because I assume they're not going to throw it as much with Mason Rudolph. So no matter which way you slice this up, Caleb Johnson has a really, really prominent role as a starting running back, as a fantasy starting running back. And I think you're right. I think RB2 is what I'm eyeing him to be for a fantasy team. So sky's the limit for him. And like you said, this early predetermined depth chart that has Jaylen Warren is incredibly, incredibly misleading. So I like that a lot. My number 1 team that I want to discuss is going to be the New England Patriots. Shashot, they have Ramondre Stevenson still as their running back, but he's going into the final year of his contract, and they drafted Travion Henderson out of the Ohio State University. He is a phenomenal running back. His the thing that's great about a guy like that is, he's automatically going to demand playing time, because outside of the fact that he's a great runner, he's fast, he's got one cut home run ability, he's one of the best pass protecting running backs coming into this league. And that's so important for coaches, right? When you're a rookie running back and one of your strengths are you can pass protect, you're automatically going to see your way onto the field. Now, you're playing for a team like the Patriots that are looking for guys to step up and looking for skill position players, playmakers, guys who can show that this team can take the next step. We've already seen Ramondre Stevenson's highs. We've already seen Ramondre Stevenson's lows. And I think at this point, we all know what he is. But Travion Henderson brings this extra juice, brings this ability to pass protect, has really, really good ability to catch footballs out of the backfield. And again, he's a home run guy that, you catch the ball, one cut and he's gone. He's got that 4.3 speed. So it's another team where, again, when you're looking for Mike Vrabel, it's a new coach. Again, they're building around a young running back. Do they want Travion Henderson as that guy, as that building block, who is same age, who's young, who fits that timeline of Drake May? Or do they want a Ramondre Stevenson, who's part of the last regime, who again is probably in the final year of his contract as a Patriot? If not, he's going to get cut. So I think that's the situation we're looking at. The one fear with Travion Henderson was because of his size, he wasn't deemed as this true bell cow. That's why they had the Judkins and Henderson split at Ohio State. But I feel like we did something so similar. I did with Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of college, where I'm like, he's just not a true bell cow. But when you have the ability now for offenses to use these crazy gadget players, crazy athletic players in space, it doesn't really matter. If he's too agile to get hit, I don't care how small he is, right? And that's kind of what Jahmyr Gibbs is proving to us. And I think Travion Henderson has the ability to be Jahmyr Gibbs light. So you're competing with Ramondre Stevenson. I don't think it's going to be very hard for you in practice to stand out. So I'm looking at Travion Henderson potentially winning this backfield job, and the Patriots as a whole, their offense taking that next step. And Drake May is really going to need a guy to lean on, and he could be that guy.
Dude, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think the ceiling is Jahmyr Gibbs. I think the floor is like an Aaron Jones. So I think
Yeah.
that's a nice floor to be at. So yeah, I'm all in. That's a solid pickup at some point in your draft that many people aren't going to target in the top 3 running backs even for your team.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so that's back to me, and my next team that I want to discuss is a team that nobody really ever wants to discuss. It's the Browns. All right, why are we talking about the Browns? Well, when it comes to fantasy football, you always want to look into the areas other people aren't really looking at to see what could be brewing, right? This early in the season, I'm not going to tell you, oh, you should have Saquon and Derrick Henry on your team, right? That sounds great right now, but just very unlikely to happen after what happened last year. So we want to focus on the areas where we can find other players that could be successful. And the Browns backfield is very, very intriguing because of the quarterback situation. One, very uncertain till this day. And then the running backs is just, there's a lot of things happening here, right? So Judkins, the counterpart to Henderson that we just talked about. I mean, he's a very viable running back. He had 14 touchdowns last year. He's comparable to like a Mixon. He's explosive. He can handle a good amount of workload, but there's signs that he may not be able to handle as much as we may have initially wanted him to be able to handle. So, unless there's a big separation between this guy and the next guy I'm talking about, there's still a lot of play here that we need to see in order to say, all right, Judkins is the guy, right? That ambiguity is what makes this interesting. And the other guy between the 3 guys I'm going to talk about in this backfield is Dylan Sampson. He is no pushover either. When you're the second rookie drafted in the backfield, not many eyes are on you. Not many people are talking about you because they're all talking about Judkins and how well he played in certain games at Ohio State. But this is the SEC Offensive Player of the Year we're talking about, right? That means something. You're one of the best players in the SEC, and your skill set has to match that. And his comparable players in the past that have played football, that after looking at his highlight reels and everything, he kind of looks like a Brian Westbrook, like a guy that can do everything. He doesn't have breakaway speed, but just a smart football player. And he finds the end zone in many different ways, right? He tied for 4th with 22 touchdowns for his team's history. The record was set like 95 years ago, and he finally broke it. I think there's a really good chance that we can see like a kind of a two-headed monster here until there's a clear separation. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen, because you don't draft 2 rookies that are able to be that have the skill set to start unless you're willing to try them both out, right? So ball security is a big issue here. I think if he fixes that, people better watch out. He might be RB1 compared to Judkins RB2, which is crazy to say at this point, but the skill set's there. And what do NFL coaches, head coaches want? They want reliability more than anything else. They want a running back that knows the plays. They want a running back that knows how the flow of the game is going, can adjust to things. And Sampson has proven to do that. So for that reason alone, not just, raw talent, but he's smart, and smart means a lot when you get to this stage of the game. And the third guy I have to mention, can't ignore, is Jerome Ford, right? He's earned enough to bring him into this conversation, and he's currently RB1 in the depth chart, but I don't care about the depth chart right now. So definitely don't do that strategy, especially if you're drafting this early for dynasty, for whatever reasons. Do not get fooled by this. Please, God, don't do that. Jerome Ford is a clear bridge for these two. So he may be in there early on. You may see him at some point during the season, early ends of the season. But if the preseason goes phenomenally, you won't see any Jerome Ford at all.
No, I think, again, another team that you're hitting the nail on the head exactly. You drafted 2 running backs, not 1, 2 running backs who both have the capability to be starters in the NFL. They have differing skill sets, and I think that's why they pair well so perfectly. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, Jerome Ford's on a 1-year contract. I think he signed like a 1-year, $1.75 million deal. And if they cut him, they take a $1.8 million dead cap hit. It's not even out of the realm of possibility that they come into training camp, these 2 guys take over, and then they have a third guy, and Ford actually gets cut, right? I mean, he is. He's exactly what you said. He's a bridge. And you said something that I think is exactly why Jerome Ford kept getting starts last year, is he's reliable. They didn't have running backs that were reliable. So Chubb would go down. Who did they have? Hunt, and then they had somebody else, Pierre Strong or something like that. But nobody essentially reliable. And Ford, just by sheer nature of being there, being present, and doing his job, earned the role. So I don't think he's got that number one running back job on lockdown, like the depth charts tell us he does. So I think you're right. It's intriguing to see if it's going to be Judkins or Sampson. But again, I think they're both going to play, and I think it's going to be worse for us as fantasy managers, because we're going to have to figure out which one we want to roster. But again, they're both rookies. They're both fresh legs. I just think in a Kevin Stefanski offense that's predicated on running, play action, we've seen how they ran Nick Chubb to the ground. Judkins is a massive human being. He's got like the same physical bruising capabilities as Nick Chubb. And then you have Sampson, who has the breakaway speed potentially, as Nick Chubb also did, right? So they're both like combining skill sets to create one super Nick Chubb, if you will. So I really like what they did. I mean, that's not even all. You mentioned the uncertainty at quarterback. Well, they drafted 2 quarterbacks. So this Brown strategy this year is really intriguing. 2 rookie quarterbacks, 2 rookie running backs. They're just going to let them fight to the death and see who wins the job. And I actually really, really like that, because what better way to bring the best out of a rookie than have another rookie in that same room being like, hey, we don't know who the winner is. You guys need to duke it out and show us that you need to win the job. So I actually really, really commend the Browns. They were in kind of a shit show situation with the Watson stuff and everything. So this is at least one way to steer your franchise in the right direction, with getting some skill position players and potentially a quarterback in Sanders or Gabriel, whoever that ends up being. So my number 2 team here, Shishot, that I want to talk about is going to be the Denver Broncos. Now, the Denver Broncos, it's another situation where I think the runway is clear for this rookie running back to come in, win the job, and potentially be another RB2 in your fantasy team, maybe even an RB1, because we've seen how Sean Payton loves his running backs. This is going to be RJ Harvey, is who the Denver Broncos drafted this year. And what's great about this is they don't have Javonte Williams anymore. Audric Estime is still there, and Jaleel McLaughlin is there. We've already heard these names before being there, right? So they've always been just complementary pieces, and we've always waited for one guy to win this job. Javonte Williams got endless opportunities, just could not do it. Jaleel McLaughlin kept showing flashes. It almost seemed like at times he was the best running back that would get put on the field, but he had limitations with what he could do as a running back, more so than a pass catcher on third down. Enter RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey played for UCF. Another guy that has elite speed, elite burst. He's another guy that has really, really good vision. The one thing that I think that's interesting here is if I was to knock him on anything, it's that he's not as fluid of a pass catcher. They didn't use him as much as they could have at UCF as a pass catcher. And Sean Payton loves pass catching running backs. I mean, the whole Alvin Kamara with the Saints for a decade, right? That's the type of skill set that he wants. RJ Harvey has the running chops that potentially Alvin Kamara has. He just, I don't know. I don't want to say he doesn't have the pass catching. We just haven't quite seen it completely unlocked yet. And again, you're going to have Bo Nix, who's going to be throwing dump offs, throwing balls behind the line of scrimmage. I think they'll give Harvey plenty of opportunity to do that. If not, let's say he can't handle the third down pass catching workload, he's still easily going to be your first and second down running back, with most likely Jaleel McLaughlin coming in on third downs to catch the ball. So I think, again, the runway is set for RJ Harvey to assume a first and second down load, and he has to prove that he can be a third down pass catcher by also pass protecting on third down. And that's something that we don't know for sure if he's going to be able to do at the next level, but I do love his skill set as a running back. And right now, the job is his to win, right? Jaleel McLaughlin's not a 3-down running back. He never will be. He just shows flashes. And I just think, again, if RJ Harvey's going to have success here, he's going to have to outbeat these guys who, again, for the last 2-3 years have simply been rotational guys in this backfield.
Yeah, totally agree. I see some potential of like prime Austin Eckler there. It's definitely there. But the catching needs to be worked at. And what's funny is like, you mentioned the other 2 guys. They're both kind of little guys. I don't really think, is Estime really a big guy? Is he like a bruiser?
He's like a stocky guy. He's like MJD, where he's like short, but like wide. Yeah.
True. So there may be some two-headed monster situation here also, but all the reports are out. They love RJ Harvey. And one thing I do want to mention while we're on the topic of running backs is, how often do you see like a little running back, or like a little guy, right? You know, like a thin, small running back just be successful at fantasy football? It's so rare. And the only one I can really think of is like Jahmyr Gibbs. And that's because the offensive line is top-notch. He's top-notch. And he's still not getting RB1 touches. You know what I mean? Like Montgomery's still ahead of him, because at the end of the day, your best ability is your
availability.
and you can't be available if you're small and get injured often. So yeah, this two-headed thing is here to stay, believe it or not. So we have to take advantage of all these opportunities where people aren't sharing the backfield anymore.
Yeah. And like you said, 10 years ago, we'd probably be drafting and we'd have guys in the second, third round that are just workhorses, right? Because the running back position was so different then. And now, similar to last year, where we had like a tier 1 of running backs that we knew would be the guy, everybody else after that, I mean, you're assuming some risk. I mean, you're basically playing in a field where a guy's going to get 15 to 17 carries, maybe potentially 2 catches or something like that. And that's going to have to be your RB2 or flex position, where in the past we're like, oh, 3 guys that get 25 carries, RB1, RB2, flex. And it's just not the NFL anymore. So like you said, you have to find these split carry running backfields, but the ones that give you the best opportunity for one guy to excel. And this is one where, again, RJ Harvey has the runway to be that guy.
Absolutely. So now I'm going to talk about the murkiest backfield I could think of. All right. And that's Carolina Panthers. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of things that could happen, and there's a lot of possibilities. Okay. First and foremost, we got Chuba. He won a lot of people leagues last year from that, mid to late surge. Won a lot of people leagues, just straight up. Right. And this year, there's really no reason for him to lose that number 1 running back situation. There really isn't. So my focus here isn't so much like the Steelers or the Browns that I mentioned. The focus here is that we have an RB1 here. We have an RB1 here that's likely not going to lose his job. Okay. I don't think Trevor Etienne's going to come in and start day 1. Okay. There may be some discussion there. I think he's a good running back, but a lot of it is just added, he's the name value from what he could be, which hasn't really panned out very much, by the way.
His brother's just been whatever.
Yeah, he really has. Just one of the highest prospects in NFL history, maybe, and he just kind of became whatever. So, the potential is why Trevor Etienne's talked about so much. He's a good running back. I'm not going to take that out of him, but he's 3rd on the depth chart at this moment. And there's Rico Dowdle also right before him. And Rico Dowdle is not the best running back in the league. He's not even, in the top 25%, but he's mid-tier. I would put him, maybe he might be the middle. I don't know. But he's good enough to where if something happens with Chuba, they would trust him to take over next, right? So that's why it's very important to keep track of this. And Chuba, I don't recall exactly, but he had some sort of issue at some point towards the end of last year. Maybe not. But at some point, he has had an injury history. And he's also a smaller running back, okay? So if they start this year with Chuba at the helm at running back, and the same offense as last year, except the wide receivers are now significantly improved, we are talking about a successful year for Chuba because the pressure's off, right? It was just a bunch of Panthers are going to be down. They're going to milk the clock at the end, just running the ball because they're going to give up. This attitude of just being destroyed every game. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think they're going to put up some good fight at some point against some teams. Their schedule is also not the worst. So Chuba, a late round pickup, is a solid strategy at this time of the year looking into the future. He can easily be your RB2, and you can get him after a lot of these backup running backs that we talked about. So that is my main focus here. Rico Dowdle's there. I don't think he's there to take Chuba's job. Trevor Etienne, we'll see what happens, but that we'll see what happens is the reason we're talking. Look at this competition. See the strides Trevor Etienne makes. If he makes big strides, pick him up. If you're drafting Chuba, forget Rico Dowdle. Pick up Trevor Etienne if he has a really successful training camp and a really successful preseason, because there's room for him to just get that job if something happens with Chuba. So a unique situation, not like the other ones that I mentioned, because there is a pretty clear-cut starter as of right now. But like in the NFL, if there's one thing we know, there is no such thing as a secure job. So again, not a priority pickup, but if Chuba's falling after his ADP, you don't want to be the guy to miss out on this.
I like it. I think the Panthers are a very, very dark horse to win 8-9 games, push for a potential division win in that division, because I don't think it's going to take a lot of wins to win that division. So I'm looking at 9-10 wins to potentially win that. We saw Bryce Young improve. It was a calf injury for Chuba, by the way. So yes, he was injured, calf injury last year, but like you said, Shishot, he won that job. And I think despite even me, like as a massive Chuba naysayer, where I was just like, yeah, he's just another guy. I think in a year where the Panthers could not show us much good, many things going right, Bryce Young, second half, slowly starting to progress, along with Chuba kind of putting the team on his back, if you will, and having some outrageous fantasy performances to end the season. So I think it is clear cut who the starter is. And I mean, we can just look at context clues to figure this out, right? The Cowboys have no running backs. They just signed 2 journeymen, and they had Rico Dowdle last year. They saw Rico Dowdle for a whole year. They also saw him as a backup for the year before. So if they truly believed in him as a starting running back, they could have probably kept him as a hometown discount because he was already a Cowboy. They could have probably signed him a little less than what he would have got paid in the open market, and they could have ran with it. But no, the Cowboys decided, rather than bringing Rico back, they brought in Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. So that tells you everything you need to know about what their outlook or their vision was on Rico Dowdle. And now enter Rico Dowdle coming into the Carolina Panthers, where you already saw a running back last year assume the role, play it perfectly, and now has earned the starting job. So yes, I think I'm with you. I think Rico is the backup to Chuba. I don't even see a world where this is going to be a split carry situation. I think it's 70-30 at best. And I think Chuba, because Chuba's earned workload. He's proven that he can take 25, 30 cut touches and be totally fine. And so improved offensive line, like you said, skill position player. They got T-Mac, who's going to be fantastic for Bryce. I think that just opens everything up for the running game. I really like it. I think he could be he can be better than what we wanted, like a Jerome Ford to be latter, at the end of last year, where we're like, we need a late round running back that we know probably is a starter, not the flashiest, not the sexiest team, but we need somebody that we know is going to get touches. And right now, Chuba is going to be that guy. I have no doubt. So I absolutely am in lockstep with you. Trevor Etienne, to be honest with you, outside of the Etienne name, doesn't scare me in the least. He would really have to do a lot to potentially even be an RB2 there. All right. Last team, I have a couple of random teams that I wrote down, but I'm trying to see what team makes the most sense to discuss here. I kind of already talked about the Cowboys because I thought about bringing them up. Their situation is so weird, man. They brought in Javonte Williams and they brought in Miles Sanders, 2 guys that, again, have shown in their previous stops that they just can't quite get it done. And so the Cowboys, rather than keeping Rico Dowdle, rather than potentially paying another running back in the open market, not even that, rather than drafting one of the 10 guys that could have been workhorses in this year's draft, they brought these guys in, and then they drafted Jaden Blue, running back out of Texas, in the late rounds, who, again, I don't think has tremendous prowess to be a 3-down running back. He's got to clean up his fumbling. But what's interesting here is he is from Texas. He is in a backfield that, it's not like it's Derrick Henry and somebody else ahead of him where he's the backup. His competition's pretty meek. So if Jaden Blue cleans up the fumbling and, he shows flashes, you're obviously always going to go with the young guy who has a lot of control, who you can run to the ground, over Miles Sanders, who we know what he is now, and Javonte Williams, who just can't stay healthy. So I think that is an interesting backfield. I'm not too enamored with the idea of having to draft Jaden Blue right now, because right now he's 3rd on the depth chart. So this is a monitor situation. But I think it is one worth monitoring because, again, the names at the top of the depth chart aren't sexy and they don't scare you off of somebody else potentially coming in and winning that job. So the Cowboys are one that I think it definitely worth a little bit of a talk
for sure.
But the one I really want to talk about, Shashot, here is the Chargers. So the Los Angeles Chargers, they lose J.K. Dobbins last year after, a pretty good year for him where they ran him to the ground because that's what they do. They run the football with Jim Harbaugh and they run a lot of play action. They ended up losing Dobbins and they brought in Mr. 300-pound man, Najee Harris. So Najee Harris is their big man on campus now. But not only that, Shashot, they drafted the number 2 running back in the draft, Omarion Hampton, in the 1st round. So we're in a situation where Najee has shown, whether you think it's efficient or inefficient, he can handle a workload, right? I mean, the dude can carry it 30 times, whether he gets you 75 yards or what, but he can at least handle the bulk share of carries. And that's what Jim Harbaugh's offense is predicated on doing, is running the football. Omarion Hampton has shown in college he can do that, but we have still yet to see that in the NFL. I don't doubt that he can do that in the NFL. I think he will. And I think he offers so much more juice than Najee Harris that he's going to work his way into eating into Najee's carries. But the fear I have here is I don't think this is a Dobbins last year situation where you could comfortably start J.K. Dobbins and run with it. No. I think Hampton at his best is going to be like if Hampton wins this job, it's going to probably still be like 55-45. I just don't see a world where Najee is irrelevant.
Goes away.
Najee is going to, Najee will not go away. He's going to get his shit. So as talented as Hampton is, as much projection as people had him coming in here and being an immediate starter in the NFL, well, the situation he went into, despite the fact that they run the hell out of the football, they have another guy that can also do that less efficiently. So I think there's going to be a true split there. So people jumping at the bit to draft a rookie running back like Omarion Hampton in a run-first offense that Jim Harbaugh runs a lot, like, slow your chops, because as annoying as Najee has been in the past for us, I think he's going to be equally annoying in the way of Omarion Hampton for for fantasy owners who are like, God, unleash Omarion, and there's Najee getting you 3 carries every time he touches the ball.
Yeah, I like Omarion Hampton a lot. He reminds me like somewhere in the middle between Gibbs and Montgomery. He's like this like different player that's not Gibbs and he's not Montgomery, but he's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think he has the ability to be that guy. It's just tough because he's in a situation where they don't have to run him 400 times because they have Najee that can do that. So another interesting backfield to definitely monitor. Obviously injuries, right? If Najee goes down, oh my God, Omarion Hampton, RB1, like
Kamani Vidal is not the guy.
Oh no, he ain't. He's not that guy. He's not that guy at all. Yeah. So definitely somebody that you would want to be a trade target early in the season, banking on the fact that he wins a job and something happens to Najee. But dude, there's so many other running back rooms that I'm intrigued and enamored by. They just quite didn't carry the weight that some of these teams that we talked about did. Any honorable mentions? Anything else maybe that we didn't mention or discuss the show?
No. I mean, just the Vikings is one of them. You know,
that is one.
Like Aaron Jones is job's not safe, buddy. Job's not safe. So
don't you think you could see a world where Jordan Mason somehow becomes first and second down running back and Jones is a third down guy?
I'm already in that world. To be honest with you, I think week 3, like things are going to change drastically.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So lots of teams. Real quick shout out to the Raiders. If you want a team that has there's really no discussion, no nothing, and you are banking on upside and you're excited. There's not a player in my mind this year that I'm more excited to potentially draft or watch somebody else draft and enjoy the excitement of than Ashton GNT, man. Like you draft that guy and your season is going to be so much fun. The Raiders are a massive dark horse this year, getting Geno, getting Pete Carroll. I think Ashton GNT RB1 in fantasy is not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think
it's just give me Bijan, and after Bijan, I'll take him. Take him right after him.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to get lucky because I think he'll be. If you get Bijan and Ginty, it'd be like a comeback. Yeah, I don't know how you would lose if you did that, but that would be incredible. But it's really exciting, man. Super excited to get back into talking about fantasy football. We'll be back with weekly episodes. Obviously, Show busy life. We'll try to get in where he can. Shovit will end up jumping back into the fold, but we're officially back. Fantasy season is back in the fold. So we'll bring you a bunch of content. If you're watching, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It helps spread the word. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok is where all of our socials are at The Only Playbook. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode. It's so great to be back. Have a fantastic week. We will see you next time.
Sorry, Najee Harris.